So we're moving down the East Coast, down to Pendleton County, Kentucky, where Barb Dickison is the chair of the Planning Commission. This area is about midway between Lexington and Cincinnati and faces a lot of growth pressures. And Barb's going to talk about how those were complicated by some severe flooding issues and continue to be, and further complicated by a proposed natural gas liquids pipeline that did not take into consideration the planning that had already occurred in her area.
Good morning. Well, I didn't ever think I would find myself in front of all these people, and thinking, oh my gosh, I retired a long time ago and I don't know how to public speak anymore, so there you go. But the reality is that this is such an important aspect for us and probably many other people as we move forward. Our problem that we had in Pendleton County was with natural gas liquids, and I haven't really heard anybody else talk about that this morning. So that's how I'm going to try to approach this and let you know some of the issues that we have. Pendleton County is small. It is pretty much up there in the northern. You can't hear me, right? Thank you. It's up there in the northern portion of the state. It's 35 miles south of Cincinnati, Ohio, and 50 miles north of Lexington. So we're kind of on that border of no man's land, Unless we have some major disaster, we hardly ever get in the news. I guess that's pretty good, too. As far as our basic information, we're only 282 square miles. We were founded in 1798, so we're kind of an old community, and the county seat of Falmouth was actually established in 1793, a little bit older than Cincinnati, Ohio, as a matter of fact. The reason it was established, as many, many communities were back then, we were on a river. As a matter of fact, we were on two rivers, and I'll explain that a little bit better as we move forward. Our population is just a little bit under 15,000 people, so we are small. Unemployment rate is pretty good. It's 6.3%. That's primarily because we're more of a bedroom community than we are anything, because most folks live in Pendleton County but go to northern Kentucky and or Cincinnati areas to work. Our income is low to moderate, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we talk about some of the natural disasters that we've had. The only good thing about the low to moderate is that we do have opportunity for CBDG grants every once in a while and get a few things done that way. But as mentioned before, our primary issues have been flooding and certainly our wetlands, of which we have an awful lot of. Let's see here. There we go. Wanted to kind of tell you about our watershed from the Licking River. It kind of starts up there. This is actually in eastern Kentucky near Prestonsburg, and the river flows north. Nobody expects your river to flow north, but it does, primarily due to the topography. And as you can see, Pendleton County is situated there. We have both the main Licking and the South Licking rivers that converge in that county. Now, we also have lots and lots of hydrosensitive areas. If you can envision that rectangular shape of Pendleton County, you can see that there is actually a whole lot of hydrosensitive area. So if there's any kind of contaminant whatsoever, it goes into our groundwater, and it goes in rapidly. Falmouth, as I said, is the county seat. Butler is another little community that's in there. It's about 600 people. But as you can see, when you look at the floodways, it's pretty significant. The South Licking is over here on the left. Main Licking comes in that way. And if you could see that kind of yellow area of Falmouth, that's all the floodplain in Falmouth itself. The two rivers converge there, flow north into Butler, and ultimately dump into the Ohio River. So here's the consequences of living on the rivers. You know, as you know, sediment builds up over the years, and, you know, we have had several floods over the years. The biggest and the worst was in 1997. We'd had a couple of weeks of rain, which made our ground, well, our ground was pretty well saturated already. And then on March 1st of 97, we had 22 inches of rain in 14 hours. This is the result. It's another picture of what Falmouth used to look like at that point. The real tragedy is that 2/3 of the town was wiped out. 5 people lost their lives. So it was a significant disaster for us. This is the community of Butler. It too was flooded significantly. So one other thing, you know, and I throw this in because, you know, we do have an endangered species of pink mollusk. And for some reason, they converge somewhere around Falmouth and Butler. And, you know, it too is a very highly sensitive species that we have. Enters the Bluegrass Pipeline. Okay, Bluegrass Pipeline is an LLC comprised of Williams Company and Boardwalk. And as you can see, it comes from the fracking fields of Pennsylvania, and their proposed pipeline is to go all the way through Ohio, Kentucky, and then meet up with some already established pipeline that's down near western Kentucky. Kind of give you a better idea of where it comes through Kentucky itself. You can see that Pendleton County is actually almost cut in half by the pipeline. Another view, and I will say that that green line is the pipeline where it comes into the county. It actually crosses that waterway that's in to the right up there is Kincaid Lake State Park, and it goes down, goes around Falmouth to the south, and actually does touch on some of the corporate level of Falmouth itself. This is a little bit better picture that you can see. And of real major interest and concern is that area that is south of Falmouth, and I'll go into that a little bit more. First indication that we had any kind of issues with a pipeline, we saw survey teams running all over the county. It was really kind of interesting. We were just kind of, as they say in Kentucky, fat, dumb, and happy. And, you know, we didn't know what was going on. And doggone it, all of a sudden, you know, I'm starting to get phone calls and say, well, what's this? You know, people are wanting to come in and survey on my property. They want easements. They want this and that and the other. And we're going, well, I don't know. So we started trying to dig in and try to understand. You know, the sad part is that parts of Kentucky had already been affected by this pipeline surge. And but we didn't think we were involved with that. So, you know, you just kind of don't pay attention until it's right under your nose. There were public meetings that were being held over the state. They were not in our county. So we really had to dig and research on our own. Some of the specifics about this pipeline, once we figured things out, was it was a 24-inch pipe carrying NGLs, natural gas liquids. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. It is a single lumen pipe. There was pump stations in order to get it pumped from Pennsylvania down to New Orleans here. And the pressure that they were going to exert through those pump stations was 12 to 1400 PSI. And they were going to deliver about 200,000 barrels of the NGLs daily through there. Pretty big concept when you think about it. As we kept looking, we found that there were no real regulations for NGL pipelines. We found that the required environmental impact studies were not as rigorous for the NGLs as it was for the gas pipelines. And an added problem that we had in Kentucky was the issue of eminent domain, because the folks from the pipeline were going up to everybody and saying, well, you know, you either sell or, you know, we can kind of force your sell through eminent domain. Well, this isn't a public utility. This was a private entity, a private enterprise. And there was no areas along that pipeline that were actually going to service anyone along the way. So, there's lots of contention about this. It's still in the courts, as we speak. But hopefully they will be denied eminent domain. Easements purchased across the pipeline, it's only a mile above the water intake for the entire county. Somewhat concerning, to say the least. Proximity of the pipeline to structures and neighboring properties, there's no setback rules for NGLs. So, everybody was concerned. I know there was a number of people who their neighbors sold the easements, and it came within 150 feet of their house, so there was a major issue there. And then the really big thing is we need to relocate Falmouth. Falmouth, as you saw, that there was quite a floodplain there. And in our comprehensive plan, which has been in place since 2002, it was identified that we needed to move Falmouth south of the town as it currently exists. Well, you saw on that previous slide that the pipeline actually goes right through the area where we needed to expand. We sat down and spoke with Bluegrass Pipeline. We had a number of issues that we addressed with them. That was in November of 2013. And, the major concerns were there also. We didn't get an answer until March 2014. And basically they said, sorry, that's where it's at. We've got the easements, and that we're going to continue on. He gave me time, so I'm trying to hurry. In the conclusions, Williams and Boardwalk evidently are no longer pursuing this. I don't think they had enough customers on the front end for this NGL pipeline. The problem is they still own some easements. They have a 36-month ability to act on that, including selling it, so we really don't know what it's going to do. And we really need oversight for NGLs. I mean, everybody's talked about gas, but these NGLs, they're pretty nasty things, when you look at what they contain. Butane and a number of other toxic and carcinogenic components to it. I'm not a scientist, but it didn't sound good to me. And then, for our own personal issues in Kentucky, we really need to define eminent domain. Thank you.